How do you follow that line up? So Jonathan Donaldson, I'm with Intel, and what I want to do today is talk a little bit about, from Intel's perspective, how we see things going in the hybrid cloud space and OpenStack space, and why it's so important to us. So about a year ago, we announced what we called the Cloud for All initiative, which was really a way for us to help foster the innovation, to help foster the delivery model of private and hybrid cloud, help push forward the OpenStack technologies themselves. And so we kind of aligned around kind of three major themes for that. So investing, right, to help create and drive enterprise-ready deployable cloud solutions and to get that uptake in the space happening, right? To optimize those technologies so that we're hitting the right TCO, right? We're hitting the right business values for the companies to want to deploy those and to see the value of those once they've been deployed. And then helping to align the industry around gaps that we see in the various technologies. And some may ask, why does Intel care so much about this, right? You create silicon, CPUs, and the hardware that the data centers run on. Because time and time again, it's shown that when we help foster innovation in the open communities, right, that tremendous things happen. Right? We see this explosion of use cases, right? That's a kind of a win-win. The more these use cases deliver value into that ecosystem or into the community or to the end users, the more they actually use, and then that obviously reflects positively back onto Intel itself. So it's one of those rare situations that we kind of have a win-win where we foster innovation, a lot of value is created, and a lot of value is consumed. So a year ago, we launched this Cloud for All initiative. So I'm kind of here to give you a little bit of a report card on some of the things we're doing and to give you a little bit of a glimpse into the future on some of the things that we are pushing forward even more. So one of the things we said is we were going to go invest, right, in OpenStack itself. And so one of the areas that we saw kind of a material weakness on is dedicated engineers that are driving OpenStack forward. Right? There was a lot of engineers out there that had been working on OpenStack since the early days, but we really thought that in order to really get the momentum pushed forward, we had to get more and more high-quality engineers that have operated clouds into the ecosystem and help have them closing the gaps that we see or did see at the time at OpenStack. So our report card from this is from an Intel perspective, we've gone from about 60 engineers to over 250 through our partners. Rackspace and Rantis, that are all focused on making OpenStack and OpenStack upstream better than it was a year ago. And so we've done a lot of work through that. Right? We've delivered in the past year to over 2 million lines through our partners that are in the Cloud for All program into the upstream OpenStack repositories. We've squashed 7,000 plus bugs during that time. And so we're going to continue to push that forward because we think that solving for those use cases, getting all of that driven upstream for the consumption of everyone, getting it more hardened, getting the bugs taken care of, and getting OpenStack itself in a much better place over time is the key value that we can drive from that investment. We've also helped to try and optimize the deployment of these various cloud stacks. So what this typically means for us is we look at a partner like Rantis, and then we partner them with an OEM like Dell, right, or Supermicro, or Quanta. And then we help them pull those two things together, their software stack, hardware stack, for an optimized kind of appliance in the case of Rantis, where they've gone kind of that extra step and been very prescriptive over what they can actually deliver into an enterprise or a telco space so that they can have that value. They can see that day one benefit from OpenStack as opposed to kind of having to go cobble it together, right, which we've all done before. And it can be painful, right? You don't necessarily see the time to value that you'd like to see on that. We also do the same type of thing with companies like Red Hat, right? So we've done it with Red Hat with Dell, Red Hat with Cisco. We've done work with Rackspace in this same area for kind of their managed on-premises cloud. And we will continue to do these things. This is the kind of the MO for Intel. We work with our partners to go make their technologies easily consumable for our customers, which we need to make sure that they stay delighted and stay consuming the value and delivering those business needs that they have. One of the things that we also saw as a need was OpenStack itself is a very complex application. And we looked around the ecosystem. This is part of our investing and aligning is what can we possibly do in that ecosystem to kind of pull the peanut butter and chocolate together to make something that's better than the individual pieces. And so to talk about that, Craig McCluskey, again from Google, coming on stage to talk a little bit about the partnership and the facilitation of this in the ecosystem that we're doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. It's been hours since we last. We can't always work out the scheduling. So, when you look at the world, and I just came off a 5-minute stint where I talked a little bit, but I've never been more excited about where IT is right now. Like, when you look at the set of disruptive trends that are converging, the constructive interference it represents to IT is amazing. We're seeing enterprises engaging in open source initiatives like never before, redefining the relationship with the software that runs their businesses. And it's hugely disruptive. It's really changing the way that software vendors operate. We're seeing cloud emerge as a better way to run your operations, or more specifically cloud patterns, ways of thinking about your infrastructure being delivered as a service, whether it's on premises or in a hosted provider arena. And obviously, we're seeing containers starting to disrupt the way that people think about packaging and deploying software, and technologies like Kubernetes emerging as a simpler and better way to build and run these systems. So amazing opportunities. And the natural outcome of this, and we saw this at Google like 10 years ago, is that we're going to have massive spikes in developer productivity. Developers are going to be able to focus on solving the hard problems that exist in their businesses. The amount of resource that has to go into running and operating the underlying physical infrastructure is going to radically be reduced. And at the end of the day, enterprises are going to be able to bring to bear massive amounts of computational resources to solve some of their hardest business problems. So it's a really bright future. But to get there, and to get there efficiently, and to avoid any form of local optima, there's a few things that we need to do as a community. The first of those things is that we as a community really need to engage in a set of open standards and open initiatives. We need to find a way to create a common framework to pull these technologies together, to allow vendors to safely specialize. And so it's really important that, as a community, we pull together and drive the standards. And folks like Intel have been instrumental in helping to marshal that that effort. The second thing that we need to do, and I could include myself in this group, is we have to stop writing letters from the future to the enterprise. We have to accept that the enterprise have a real set of problems. They can't just stop what they're doing and move on. That's why initiatives like OpenStack that bring really familiar and traditional infrastructure primitives to enterprise are such an important engagement point for these more progressive cloud-native communities. And so, in order to make this all come together, obviously deep partnerships and work across a lot of the vendors are going to be really important to do this. Intel has provided tremendous value in sponsoring a lot of these initiatives and really helping to bring folks like CoreOS and Mirantis and Google together to start focusing on some of those on-premises problems. And I expect that as a community, we're going to need to continue to work through some of these open foundations to make this all a better place for us to build our businesses. And so, definitely, I am very excited about what the next couple of years are going to hold. I think that the outcomes are going to be amazing. And I think the really important thing for us is to continue to work and pull together as a community, focus on operating both in an open and in a way that fosters innovation through a set of emerging standards. So thank you, Intel, for everything.
Thanks, Craig. So questions on OpenStack and Kubernetes. So we kind of have the over-under inception kind of thing happening here. And one of the things that we found is that in order to be able to address the container and microservices ecosystem, if you're already running OpenStack, you're going to layer that on top, right? You're going to start to deploy applications in that style. And then over time, you're going to want to also have that as a core competency in your data center as a core offering. And so then we started to look at, okay, so if we take Mirantis and we layer something like Tectonic on top of it, or we layer Kubernetes, right, with just container system on top of that as one delivery model, that's fantastic. And then we started to explore, well, hey, some of the upgradability issues, some of the HA issues of the services themselves in OpenStack really lended themselves well to being monitored and maintained by something like Kubernetes, which is built for dealing with complex applications. And so we looked at that and said, okay, that's a good mashing together of two technologies to solve the problem. And so now we get into the situation where along with Kubernetes, along with Google, along with Mirantis, along with CoreOS, depending upon where you're starting from, right? If you're starting from a containerized data center, you may want to offer OpenStack as a service, infrastructure as a service, and so you can actually then go spin up a full instantiation of OpenStack on top of that infrastructure. If you're starting from a more OpenStack, virtual machine-centric world, and you have lots of, OpenStack experience, but you want to be able to start leveraging containerized workloads, then you'll start with a Mirantis type of installation, and you'll layer Kubernetes on top of that, and you also get the benefit of the containerized services to drive the availability and the upgradability. So it really is a fantastic pulling together of a couple of communities to go solve a big problem that I think is going to pay off relatively soon. Another important thing that we found is that if you're really going to go do things like containerized workloads and advanced scheduling and solve some of the problems of, is my infrastructure running the way it's supposed to? Do I get the TCO and the business benefits that I want? Am I operating as efficiently as possible? There's a lack of knowledge of what's actually happening, right? We all look at things like, Collectd and other things, and we get very kind of, gross level statistics, CPU utilization, network bandwidth utilization, storage utilization, but we really don't dig into the under layers. And so one of the things we did is we launched a project called Snap, which is on GitHub. Anyone can grab it, pull it down. But the goal of this is there's a wealth of data that you can collect from the platform itself, from the CPU, from the SSDs, from the NICs, right? From just everything from thermals to C states to whether you are doing your thrashing the cache, right? There's a whole lot of things that can be pulled from the silicon. And so one of the things we found is that we wanted to make that easy. So that people can use that for scheduling, they can use it for capacity planning, they can use it for operations monitoring. And so we launched Snap. It has been going like crazy in the community. About 1,000-fold increase in the number of contributors, and at one point in time, it was kind of right behind Kubernetes, the most starred Go repository in GitHub. So, we're seeing a lot of uptake on this. In fact, Mirantis is using this now for their Stacklight monitoring for OpenStack. So we're going to start to see a lot of this come out. And these types of initiatives, this type of pushing the innovation forward, will give us the knowledge and the capabilities that we need to actually deliver on the promises that we've all set out with for hybrid cloud. Event-driven computing, also known as serverless computing in some areas, and obviously from an Intel perspective, we really, really don't like the serverless name. So event-driven computing is absolutely not serverless. It takes a lot of servers, remember that. But in order to bring those types of capabilities, which we think are incredibly valuable in a lot of the emerging spaces, IoT, right, autonomous driving, you name it, right? If I am going to go deliver something that needs this type of event-driven computing style, we need to have that on top of OpenStack. And so here to talk about it a little bit is Chad from IronIo. Welcome, Chad.
Thanks, Jonathan. At IronIo, we have been operating an event-driven job processing service in the public cloud for the past 5 years. Having launched over 1 billion containers last year alone in production for our customers, we are thrilled to be working in collaboration with Intel to offer both an event-driven and Lambda-style compute service for the OpenStack platform. Starting with native OpenStack sources as triggers, functions both asynchronous and synchronous will be triggered and executed inside of containers, and the infrastructure required to service those functions will automatically be scaled up and down on an on-demand capacity need. Additionally, as Jonathan mentioned earlier, we will be working on workload automation by utilizing the Intel Snap telemetry framework to automatically profile workloads as they come into the service and then route those to the underlying hardware that is best optimized or best suited for that particular workload. Ultimately, this is to lower your total cost of ownership by increasing the utilization of the capacity that you have available today. We'll be working on integrations with Keystone for authentication, Ceilometer for billing, For deployment, we'll be working on an integration with Murano, and we're very excited to announce that everything will be released under an open source license with Apache 2. So again, we're extremely excited to be working in collaboration with both Intel and the broader OpenStack community to empower every private cloud to offer the same great production level services that the public cloud is currently offering today.
Great. Thank you, Chad.
Yeah.
So one thing to take away from what Intel is doing in this space is we want to keep pushing the innovation forward, right? We want to be able to deliver into the hybrid cloud space the same types of services that you might expect in all the different public clouds, right? We think that from a growth perspective, from developing new application styles, from unleashing and unlocking new capabilities and new features and new models of consumption in the IT space, right? These things are required to actually get right and to have out there in the public space, especially in the open source space. So we've also launched kind of our Intel Builders Program for Cloud, which means that we have kind of one place for all of our partners to put materials, to have discussions, to foster innovation. We have 350 partners engaged there. Lots and lots of technical publications on the value and different ways of doing things, different delivery styles. We're training lots and lots of developers in this space. So if somebody wants to be a developer that can develop for the APIs of OpenStack to deliver applications or value to their company, if they want to be part of a vendor community to go foster this innovation, if they want to learn event-driven computing and how they go right for something like IronIo, we feel that it's very, very important that we help foster and facilitate those education events. And so, almost 6,000 developers trained to date through the program on these types of things. We have a builders program wrapped around cloud delivery models, storage, networking, the fabric and HPC type of spaces. So we think that this is very, very important for us all to raise the waterline so that everybody gets to the same place over time. So are we on track for the tens of thousands of new clouds, right? So this is, again, kind of the report card thing. Yes, we've seen a 300% increase over the last 12 months of private cloud deployments, right? Remember, private cloud is the anchor point for the hybrid cloud into the public clouds like AWS, Google, Rackspace, et cetera, right? And that is the key component of that. And it's probably why we're all here today talking about OpenStack. So 300% growth, 3x growth in that space. Penetrations, we're seeing upwards of 20 to 30%, depending upon who you ask. About 36% of the firms, right, OpenStack is being deployed there. So we think that is a great, great number. The growth on that, again, is significant over this past year and the past 2 years. And we think a lot of that is due to the diligence of the OpenStack community and of the foundation on making sure that we're solving the right problems and that we're putting the right engineering from the right companies, from the right open source areas behind those problems to get them solved. And we really like the impact that that's starting to have in the marketplace. OpenStack and VMware are the leading stacks being used in private cloud. And the interesting thing here is that they're tied at about 19-20% penetration for both of them, right? Which is a great shout out to OpenStack for getting that type of momentum that early into that space. So again, keep up the good work. We think it is just phenomenal, the amount of traction that OpenStack has had over the past couple of years. And we'd like to see that momentum continue to grow. We would like to see all public clouds continue to grow and private clouds that connect to those. So the call to action, right? You can never really have a good presentation without asking something in return. And we really want to see the pace and change, right? We've seen some really good momentum happening. We've built really great partnerships with companies like Mirantis, with Google, with CoreOS, with Red Hat, with others. And we really want to see all of us accelerate and drive that change. We're starting to see kind of the upswing and the hockey stick on the graph, and we want to make sure that that trajectory continues to climb. We need to embrace disruption. right? And, having Kubernetes come into the OpenStack community was not the easiest thing for us to go champion along with the foundation in there, right? It is a disruptive change on how we thought about how we deliver OpenStack and how we deliver applications. But it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to embrace. It's the right disruption to drive because at the end of the day, it solves the problems and it gives us new delivery models that people are asking for. And if we're not working for the customers that are going to be deploying OpenStack, then we're not working for the right people, right? We need to make sure that we solve for the problems that they have. And we need more app developer services, right? We need, if you go and you look at the things that are really driving the public cloud space, right? And we think that those are phenomenal, right? The number of applications on your phone, right? On your iPhone or your Android phone would not be where they are today if it weren't for the public clouds delivering load balances as a service, database as a service, key value stores as a service, right? Things like Lambda, which IronIo is bringing to OpenStack. We need more of those fostered on top of OpenStack because those are the things that help accelerate the developers themselves deploying the applications. And we have a feeling that there's a tremendous amount of unlocked potential inside the enterprise space if we can get those application services deployed. And they'll start to use them. They'll start to drive new application models. They'll start to drive new application capabilities that are strategic for their business. And so another call to action for us is to get more of the IronIo type of application services on top of OpenStack. So with that, I thank you for your time today, and have a good rest of the session.